trying to troubleshoot technical issues live, but isn't that what these Twitch streams are for?
Oh, yes.
So hello, everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do we have an intro for this, Ryan, or do we just go
We have a
ahead and
countdown video, but
let's
should
do
we
the
play
countdown
that?
video because we need
right.
that. Because Greg, right now, just so you all know, we're getting weird resolution issues from Greg's computer. So as we speak, in the wild, Greg is currently jumping over to a Mac, and then he's going to try to join, maybe RDP into his Windows system and share that. And for the record, it worked perfectly, and then it stopped working perfectly.
And then it didn't work at all.
I just pull something out of my butt randomly as we go through this in just a few moments. So with that, let's do the countdown.
Here's the countdown video.
We'll come back. Do-do-do-do. Hello and welcome to another edition of Antisyphon address space layout randomization. In this particular episode, we have no freaking clue what we're actually going to do. We're currently working with Greg, and he is trying to get his screen to kick out the proper resolution, coming into Restream and feeding it to all of you, but it looks just horrible. So he's literally bringing up a new computer in the process of trying to get this set up. And for those of you that say second, welcome to our live stream. I'm joined by Ryan and Serena, as always, and I've been out of pocket for like a long time. I honestly don't know when was the last time I was here. Did I talk about the Capital One hack at all?
I don't think so.
For Monday? For the news?
No, well, I think I was on the news, but not for AASLR. No. So
it's been a while.
It's been a while. So while we're waiting for Greg, do you want to talk about Capital One hack?
Yes.
Sure.
That, or I can give facts about Hazel, so we can let.
Okay, so what we're going to do is I'll talk.
Oh, we can take a
and then I'm going to throw it over to you. You're going to give us a fact about Hazel.
Oh, there we go.
And then we'll talk about Capital One. Okay?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do. All right, so here we go. So I'm going to bring up just a random article on the Capital One hack, and I'm going to share my screen. There we go, like that.
Coming in.
So this is where I was a couple of weeks ago. Oh my god!
Ooh, an ad.
They got an ad. There you go.
You were at this ad.
I am now at this ad at Tech Target. Ew! I got Tech Target all over my computer. That's weird. So I was an expert witness in the Paige Thompson trial, and I was out in Seattle working with prosecution on this case. And it was actually really, really, really interesting because the way the defense was trying to structure the defense in this particular case was quite simply, if you misconfigure your servers on the internet, then you're going to get hacked. And not only do you get hacked, but you deserve to get hacked. And their argument was all she did was just simply access a proxy that forwarded the traffic into the internal instance metadata service in AWS. And then, oopsies, she gained access to 100 million records. And through some other victims, she was also doing cryptojacking. So that was an interesting play by the defense, but I didn't think it worked very well because she was actually found guilty on all hacking charges relating to this. But the reason why I wanted to talk about it here and why I wanted to set it up is the Department of Justice has changed the way that they look at good faith security research. Good faith security research was huge in this trial. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand it over to Serena to give us some puppy facts while I bring up good faith security research facts from the Department of Justice.
Okay, yeah. So Hazel here, she is 6 years old. She is a napper. Yeah. Her vest, I got her a new one because she likes to pull, and she was like ripping it apart. It's a little big, but you know. She weighs 11 pounds, so that's a cool
How do you know
fact.
that? Do you weigh her every day?
What?
Do you weigh her every day?
No, I just when we go to the vet.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm just wondering, like, if you're like picking her up, you're like, yes, she's an 11-pound puppy today.
No, she. So when I first got her, she was like 8 pounds, and I got her when she was 2. Now she's 11. I don't think I overfeed her though, so I don't really know. And we go on like multiple walks a day, so she's just a
Yeah.
little chonk.
You got to stop taking her to Fogo de Chão, probably. That was my solution.
Does
All
Hazel
right.
network too? Yeah, she does. Sometimes. I taught her how to subnet, so.
She networks at the dog park.
Really impressive. I've been trying to teach people how to subnet for years. So, all right. So back to the Paige Thompson trial. So the good faith security research concept is something the Department of Justice is working very hard to create a delineation for people that do hacking, much like Paige Thompson was doing, where she's breaking into systems without authorization, without permission. But she's also going further, and she's not doing it for the public good. She's not doing it specifically to help a company be better in their information security practices. So this policy kind of came out right in the middle of working on the Paige Thompson trial. And I think it's a step in the right direction, because ultimately, if you're looking at good faith security research, if you are working, especially in like cloud services, and you find a misconfiguration or a vulnerability, it can be to actually bring that vulnerability or bring that research to that specific company, because companies have a nasty tendency of trying to sue you or press charges against you. So when you're looking at good faith security research, one of the hallmarks is, what is your end goal? Is your end goal to communicate this with a company? Preferably they have a bug bounty program that they're actually working through. Is your goal to talk about a bug in something like DNS or the way the entire internet works, and you're working with the community to address that vulnerability? Or are you not sharing the vulnerability or the details of that research with anybody publicly, or are you using it for personal gain? Now, kind of setting this up as a juxtaposition with the Paige Thompson trial, Paige Thompson broke into Capital One's data. They pulled over 100 million records, or she pulled down 100 million records, and she also recorded like what she was doing on Slack with some of her friends. And her friends were even saying, this is really dangerous, be careful. She's like, I'm coming through multiple proxies. I'm going to encrypt it and store it for later, whatever that meant. That was most clearly not good faith security research.
Yeah.
So this gets into, if you're doing security research on the open internet and you're actually communicating with people, working within the confines of bug bounty programs, when you find a vulnerability in someone's infrastructure, then you can start communicating with that company. Most likely, if you're listening to this, I put that in air quotes, the Department of Justice will not bring charges against you, which is a good thing. Now, a little bit of inside baseball.
One note about this, though, if you are using all these proxies, I feel like putting all the evidence of what you're doing on Slack might defeat the purpose of all those proxies.
Oh yes, oh yes. Let's spend a second for criminals out there. Don't put your Slack. No, that's kind of funny. So the other thing that I think is interesting is, where did the Department of Justice get the term good faith security research? Like, did they just pull it out of the air? Well, where they actually got the term good faith security research and good faith security researcher was actually from a paper that was written by one of the expert witnesses for the defense, a gentleman by the name of Halderman, Dr. Halderman, from the University of Michigan. He was basically advocating that if somebody has a misconfigured server, they can totally get hacked at any time with no repercussions for the attackers. Where the term good faith security research came from was one of his papers with the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which I also agree is bad, where he was advocating the concept of good faith security research and good faith security researcher, a phrase that he used in that paper 57 times, I think was the number. So they literally used a phrase that was used by an expert witness on the other side against the defense in this particular situation. But this is great because for us in the security research community, as long as you're above board, you're not documenting your crime on Slack, and you're trying to coordinate and work with companies and work with the community as a whole, you're probably going to be all right. So let's take a couple of seconds and let's see how our screen sharing is going. I'm going to stop sharing on my screen. There we go.
Whoops. Buttons. I've got no update from Greg yet.
Okay, cool. So let's go through some questions. Maho42, zero trust in a different sense, kind of, whenever you're looking at cloud computing. Serena's computer chair flipping recliner. I'm doing life wrong. Is it a flipping recliner?
It's just a very big chair. I do have over here, if you can see it, a Herman Miller chair.
Which is not in use.
Which is not in use. Because I bought this big comfy chair, and then I was like, if I just push this over to my desk, Anyway, it's pretty comfortable.
True hacker.
I think it's time for a Greg update. Greg is still trying to get his Mac to boot. I don't know what people are saying about my filter. They're like, is John going through some type of naked filter?
I don't know what that was about. No.
I don't know what that means. And no, I guess. So. Oh, there we go.
Have Greg. Let me unmute him so he can talk to us. Now we can hear you.
Yeah, so I feel, I thought I was prepared for this. I guess I'm not. Anyways, I'm spinning up another computer right now to get this thing going. The thing is, like, none of the tools are installed in the MacBook box. So I'm not sure what you guys want to do. Did you already what's up?
Let's just push. We can definitely do it another time. How's that sound?
Yeah, I don't want to waste anybody's time. I'd rather push than just keep going with this thing.
All right, let's just push then. And what we're going to do is we're going to continue with Hazel Facts, random tech things from the internet, and ask us anything. Greg, do you want to hang out for Ask Us Anything as it relates to
absolutely.
Whatever it is people want to ask us? We'll just do that. So I think it's time. So while you're all typing up various questions you have for the four of us, the questions can be puppies, hacking, computers, or photography and video. Ryan will be happy to answer any of those questions as well. Let's get another puppy fact.
Hazel. Oh gosh. All right. Let me think. Oh, so
you went through way too many. You went through way too many. The first time.
Used them all up.
No, I did one of those doggy DNA tests.
What?
Yeah. Okay. Because she was a rescue, and when I took her to the vet, I initially asked, what is she? And so he's like, oh, she's like a dachshund because she's very long, and like a Chihuahua Terrier mix. So when I did the doggy DNA test, she's actually a mini poodle Chihuahua mix. Like those are like her main.
Can you hold her up? I don't know if I believe that. She doesn't look like a mini poodle Chihuahua.
She's on the floor now. Come here.
Yeah. And we're wondering why she's fat. So. Right.
But yeah, so that's a fun fact. I also found out that she probably came from a puppy mill because they just found her wandering around and she wasn't fixed and she was already 2 and
she was disoriented on the street.
She escaped.
Yeah, she escaped and nobody claimed her and she didn't have a chip or anything. So but when it matches you with other dogs that are related to your dog, like ancestry, I swear.
All right, so we've got a question from Kumar. Is DLL sideloading different than search order hijacking? And if so, how?
Hey, what's going on, Giant Kumar? I hope I pronounced that right. So I would say DLL sideloading is a subcategory underneath DLL search order hijacking. So the way that DLL sideloading works is that, so say you want to do a DLL sideload for teams.exe, for example, you could use process monitor to filter for all of the DLLs that it loads at runtime. And then you would want to find one that is loaded into the app data folder, and that would be readable, writable, and executable. And that if it comes back as name not found, and you make your malware that DLL, That way, when Teams is executed, it'll search for your DLL. But say it's like later in the search order of when Windows searches for the DLLs that Teams needs, your malware will not execute. So it's definitely
Well, wait a minute.
search order hijacking is definitely part of DLL sideloading.
So one of the questions I always wanted to ask about this, because I have a legitimate question on this topic. A lot of apps only load dynamic link libraries specifically when they're invoked within the app. What I mean by that is you can be running an app and then in the middle of running that app, calling a function that invokes a dynamic link library. So when you're doing your research, do you do research just what is loaded with the app whenever it starts normally, or do you also look at dynamic link libraries that may be loaded as the app is functioning?
So what I'll do for that is I will actually take the teams.exe, I'll drop that in IDA Pro, and I'll look at every single export that it exports because Teams might be loading that DLL multiple times. There's multiple ways to skin this cat too. There's also like a little Python script that Charles Hamilton has on his GitHub where you can look at every single DLL that it needs as well. So that being said, what you can do is in your malware, it has to be named the same thing as the legitimate DLL that like Teams would call. So that way it hits it. And you could also then proxy that legitimate DLL to your shellcode function. So say it's supposed to call some DLL, you can just proxy that to your shellcode. That way Teams, every time Teams calls that DLL, your shellcode executes. That being said, you don't want 100 beacons because say your DLL is called 100 times, you could write into your code like you've already executed to skip over it, if that makes sense.
Now, with DLL sidejacking and like this type of attack, I remember it was really, really, really huge like a few years ago, and I still see our testers using it to this day. Is it getting rarer, or do you feel like it's every bit as dangerous as it was like 5-6 years ago?
I would say it's as every bit dangerous now as it's ever been because Microsoft doesn't see it as a vulnerability. They see it as a function of the operating system. So they're not going to fix it.
Now, so with Microsoft and the operating system, you can have certain levels of trust for dynamic link libraries. Is that just for the core operating system? Like it has to be signed at a certain level from a vendor that they trust? With third-party apps, it seems like that isn't the case. Is that a correct assessment?
That's a great question. I usually target signed Microsoft binaries. I haven't dabbled as much in like third-party apps.
Okay. And then Justin asked a question: do existing EDR tools flag suspicious DLL calls? I don't know quite what a suspicious DLL call would be, but I think that's a good question.
I would say that this is very silent from an EDR perspective. It's pretty hard to detect on this. Now, juxtapose, like, so we're talking about exports right now. If we're talking about imports, EDRs will flag on malicious imports in the imports address table all day. So for instance, Minicats uses minidump write dump, which lives in dbghelp.dll. That's been an EDR and AV products since Minicats came out. I think it was in like 2014. So DLLs are a little bit harder for EDRs to figure out at this point.
Now, with the DLLs, though, if you can actually get a valid code signing certificate, going back to like Duke was looking for valid code signing certificates, go back to Stuxnet, which had Signature Realtek and J Micron. Those are actually legitimate companies. Simply signing your dynamic link library, does that reduce the detection associated with it? Like if you actually go through and get a code signing certificate?
Absolutely. And there's levels to this thing. So there's tools like SigThief and Carbon Copy that will basically create a signature for you and sign your binary, but it's not a legitimate code signing cert. You can go through the whole process of getting a code signing cert. There's companies like Sectigo, Komodo, Instant SSL. You could go on and you can actually buy one. You can stand up a fake LLC, use like a trusted agent so that your name isn't actually on the LLC, and then go all the way through the process. That is expensive and time consuming. But if you're a red teamer and you have like, months on an engagement, it might be worth it.
Well, and we used to, well, I think we still, actually, Brian Furman still has one that we use quite a bit. We actually use it for like signing some of our VB code, is what he's been working with as well. Justin asks, or I think he's following on, where malicious code is being run in response to DLL calls, as we mentioned previously. So that's an extension of do existing EDR tools flag suspicious DLL calls or where malicious code is being run in response to DLL calls that was mentioned previously. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you just go into like MS Venom and you output some raw shell code and you're trying to run that in your DLL and it's not obfuscated whatsoever, that'll get flagged all day in memory. That's why you have to obfuscate your shell code. That's the first thing that will get you busted if you're trying to do this attack, is not obfuscating or encrypting your shell code.
Okay, very cool. All right, so with the obfuscation of your shellcode, what do you use, like automated tools to do that obfuscation for you, or what are you doing? I know it's a multitude of different techniques. What are some of the ones that are working good for you now in obfuscation?
Yeah, so if you use things like base64, that'll get you busted pretty fast. If you pack, encrypt, or compress, that's going to raise the entropy, and that's going to be a red flag also. So what I actually like to do is going back to like a little Python program that Charles wrote, my buddy. He actually so what we'll do a find byte for all the hexadecimal values that are not present in our shellcode, and then we'll pick one of those values, and then we'll append that randomly throughout our shellcode. So that way, basically our shellcode still runs, but you do have to write a decoder that looks specifically for that obfuscation, if that makes sense. So like it's custom obfuscation at this point. We try not to do any kind of encryption or base64 encoding.
Just because it looks like random gibberish, and a lot of tools, they detect that random gibberish, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, if you encrypt, EDRs will pick that up.
Okay.
Because it raises the entropy.
All right, awesome. So folks, keep the questions coming. It's pretty awesome. So you mentioned MS Venom, which I think is a great, MS Venom is wrapper of MSF payload and MSF encode, which, does that. But we don't see a lot of like pen testing companies using the Metasploit suite all that often. They tend to be using things like Cobalt Strike. So these same techniques would apply for encoding in Cobalt Strike, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, Cobalt Strike is really easy to generate shellcode. You just go into attacks, and then I think it's like Windows, creating a Windows raw shellcode. Stageless is what we tend to do, because stagely you busted.
Okay, and people were asking earlier, why is it pen testing firms aren't using Metasploit all that much? It's not that there's anything inherently wrong with Metasploit. It's just that Metasploit being used for like individual test cases works great. Whenever you start using it regularly within a team and you want to share connectivity and you want to like kind of modify your C2 on the fly, Metasploit doesn't really have the feature set that something like Cobalt Strike has that just makes it better across using like for a team doing pen testing. So yeah, we're not ripping on Metasploit at all. It's just something that a lot of offensive professionals are moving to more professional toolkits today. So just making that very clear. How does this compare to the log4j vulnerability? That's kind of interesting. I think it's kind of related, but not really, right?
Yeah, I mean, kind of, I guess. I'm looking at some of these other questions. Any project ideas for becoming a pen tester that would impress hiring managers? Undefined 838. I would say writing anything, like showing passion, like writing a blog, having a GitHub, anything like that. Having like a certification like Security Plus, that will show that you're passionate. Yeah, like, I mean, you can just go and start a blog right now and like write a blog at Nmap or something that would provide value to the community.
Yeah. All right, what else do we have? Yep. So whenever you're utilizing this, one of the things that we've been running into at BHIS is you can get initial code execution relatively easily still to this day for bypassing, let's say, EDRs, right? Once you start executing something, like you actually start enumerating network or you start enumerating things in Active Directory, that's usually where EDRs catch you, not necessarily in the code itself, but the actions the code is taking. What are your, can this type of obfuscation, the things you're talking about, actually assist with that, or do those problems still arise for like that post-exploitation lateral movement and escalation techniques?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, if you do this long enough, you're going to get busted no matter what. It doesn't matter what you do. The best thing that you can do is go on to something like Crunchbase. If you're doing a red team, try to find the tech stack that they're using. You could use a built with. So like I would use that for standing up like a little demo network. So that way, if they're using CrowdStrike, if they're using Cylance, you can actually demo your attacks and try everything in the lab before going live. Because the worst thing that you can do in an operation is you're about to take an action and you don't know the effects of that actions they have on the network. Like you don't know what's going to show up in an event viewer. Curb roasting is going to throw a 4769, I think is what it is. So just knowing things like that and everything that the EDR could be looking for.
So Justin Farrow just asked a question from a blue team perspective, trying to translate DLL sideloading into risk. How would you consider this fairly trivial, high probability? I would say I don't want to say it's trivial, but we use it a lot. We see attackers using a lot. And I would say the probability it's one of the first things that attackers are doing. I don't know. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I would say the barrier to entry for this attack is fairly low. What's going to get you busted on a DLL sideload is not actually understanding how the attack is working. So for instance, there's a DLL that is used in the team's application called user end, and that's loaded in the app data folder. You would have to understand like all the exports that the legitimate user env is exporting, and that's found in system 32. So you'd have to go into IDA, look at all the exports. You'd have to make sure that your malware proxies all that code, because if you get execution and Teams is just hanging there, that's going to be an IOC. That user is going to notice that abnormal behavior, and if you don't migrate, like your attack is over.
Yeah, and that migration is definitely a point of detection, or sorry, for sure. Now, with the techniques that you're talking about, especially with obfuscation, do you use seatbelt all that often? And I can share a link to that to actually go through and test what you're doing to see what it's like. What is the likelihood that it would actually be detected?
Yeah, absolutely. And we would use something like Confuser X to obfuscate our .NET assemblies.
Okay, cool. I just shared a link discussing seatbelt. Greg, if you want to throw the link of your tool that you mentioned in there as well, Ryan will share it with the community as well. What is the most common way you're landing DLL sideloading into a network? What about your foothold? I guess that's a good question, right? So this type of technique, you wouldn't necessarily use it for initial attack and compromise, would you? Or I don't know. I think the techniques you're talking about can be used in multiple stages, but I don't know. Your take.
Yeah, I would say this is a great persistence mechanism. So say you're using some kind of very commonly used application in an enterprise environment, Teams, OneDrive, Excel, something like that. So every time that user wakes up in the morning, do their commute, get their coffee, they sit down on their computer, they open Teams, your beacon executes. And then every time Teams is executed, your beacon executes. So
I've got to stop you. You've mentioned Teams like at least 10, 15 times.
I know, because all my research has been around Teams for the DLL sideload attack. So
there's it's installed everywhere in corporate networks, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what's running everywhere? And everyone hates it. It's not like it seizes and people are going to be like, my system might be hacked. There's going to be like Teams is garbage, right?
I was literally just looking at my Teams because it says I'm offline right now. And I'm like, I don't know why it says that. Like I change it back every time. And it's just like, no.
I think
that's awesome.
Serena, I think one of your first messages to me on Teams or in a team group was, I hate Teams.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
When I worked at Cisco, we had WebEx Teams and then we had Jabber, but all of the TAC engineers would only use Jabber and the rest of the company would use Teams. So that like the TAC engineers use Jabber so nobody would bother them from like account managers and sales engineers.
It's like your secret place. I'm convinced somewhere at Black Hills Information Security there's an IRC server that is away from my systems team and me. And everybody's using IRC and like there's no way John will come here. So, all right. So, Greg, so I want to get you back next week, okay? Like Tuesday of next week. when
Okay.
we do this, what are we going to see live? Like, what are we going to see whenever you do this live and you actually show this to people so they know to come show up next Tuesday?
Yeah.
Or
So
Wednesday. We have a
yeah.
schedule as soon as possible.
Yeah. So the way the hour will go is that we'll basically get the shell of the DLL in code blocks, and we're going to take that shell and then we're going to move it over to Visual Studio because I like using Visual Studio more. And then we're going to go through all the DLLs that Teams is going to search for that aren't loaded at runtime. So maybe we could make like a DLL that it's going to look for and pop. And then we're going to go through making that DLL. We're going to look at all the legitimate DLLs that Teams is supposed to load, and we're going to use like one of those. And then we're going to add the exports for malware. We're going to go through using Procmon. We're going to go through using Access Check. Access Check is a system internals tool that basically you can run it against a C drive. It'll tell you wherever you have read-write and read-write permissions on the network or on the file system. Procmon can be used for actually finding which DLL we're supposed to be that the application is looking for, so that way we can find juicy targets to attack. And then eventually we'll get code execution.
All right, awesome. And this is like a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. This is stuff that, like, if people want to get into this field of research, this is like a quick 1 hour primer on how to do this, right?
Yep. Yeah, there'll be a lot of little utilities that we use to make it. Everything's going to be free and open source. We use Cobalt Strike at White Knight Labs, but for this, we're just going to be generating raw shell code with Metasploit. So everything will be reproducible for everyone watching.
So everybody, consider this to be a teaser of what we're going to be doing soon. I don't know if it's next week or not, but as soon as possible, we're going to get Greg here and we're going to go through this. And we will definitely work through it. All right. So with that, this is a short AASLR, just because, I don't know, like video issues. Greg, can you try sharing your screen one more time? I have a feeling it might be working now that we're at the end.
No. Okay,
no,
hold on.
Ryan says.
No, we can at least show people what happened.
Yeah, we can show people what the problem is.
Okay.
Yeah. So here we go. This is what we're fighting, folks.
I actually have nothing on that screen. Let me move some stuff over to it.
And it was working, like, no joke. It was working flawlessly. And we started walking through it, and it just, like, right in the middle of it, just pooped all over itself. And then he's tried rebooting, logging off and on again. We're at the bottom of the barrel, folks. If we're rebooting systems, we have literally no troubleshooting steps left after this point.
You know, sidebar though, nobody really liked my raccoon flying on a UFO photo on Twitter, and I thought that was pretty cool. So
I liked it. Didn't I like it?
I don't know. I have to look.
How does that look? Can you
Looks better actually than it have been.
So full disclosure, that was a Chrome tab. That wasn't like you seeing a whole window. So that might be why.
Yeah. Now try doing the whole window. Do a whole window next.
No, I see this.
Yeah, it's Inception.
Oh, it went away.
Okay. Do you see screen 2?
I see it. Yeah, it looks blank.
Here we go. That still looks better.
That still looks better.
It's consistent. This is 1 pixel of an eye.
That's awesome, man.
All right.
Wow.
All right. So that's kind of what we were fighting with screen sharing. And like I said, I had a feeling it was going to start working. So we'll just have to troubleshoot that through. What you can do is fire up a video game in the background where your video card is thrown to using the GPU and just
Minecraft.
Minimize it.
I'm not
And then
Minecraft. Minefield work.
Yeah, and then everybody is going to make fun of you for your taste in video games. So trust me on that. All right, everybody. So that's it for this week of address space layout randomization from Antisyphon Security. As always, if you need to get hacked or you're afraid of getting hacked, would like to learn how to hack all your hacking needs, check out Black Hills Information Security and Antisyphon Security Training. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.
All right, I'm going to say the words because Jason's not here. Kill it with fire, Ryan.